Part 15. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Gugu Da. Chapter 141. Chapter 141, Go ahead. In the name of God, judge all living beings. In the kitchen, Li Yun and Yu Yiren got up early after a night's rest. Zhang Kaiyu, who was busy making breakfast next to them, kept yawning. Why are you so sleepy? Lord, did they sleep very late last night? Li Yun raised her hand and punched her waist twice. Seeing Zhang Kaiyu's troubled face, she felt very confused. Zhang Kaiyu glanced at Li Yun and Yu Yiren angrily, looking at the two women's moist skin, she couldn't believe it. Wu Jiao said, what do you think? On which day did you fall asleep before 2 o'clock? How am I like you? I went to sleep happily without even cooking dinner. Thunder in the master bedroom didn't even wake you up. Listening to Zhang Kaiyu's sour words, Li Yun didn't know what she was talking about. She looked at each other with Yu Yiren and her face turned red. They were so tired last night that they didn't know what happened. They looked at Li Yun and Li Yun. Silent and smacking her waist from time to time, Zhang Kaiyu asked with some confusion, what's wrong with you two? Have you been beating since morning? Did you twist your waist last night? Li Yun and Yu Yi's faces turned redder. They didn't know how to explain it for a while. Zhang Kaiyu quickly reacted and looked at the two of them in surprise. Isn't it? Are you two such good people? For those who don't know, they'd think you two are little girls, that's all. Li Yun turned her head and glared at Zhang Kaiyu, and said angrily, okay, why don't you kick your nose in the face? Why is it so bad? Proceed if you can. How can you stand and talk without backache? If it were you, it would be useless in minutes. Yu Yiren washed the dishes in her hands and whispered, this has nothing to do with us. We have worked very hard, but the model is not suitable. What's the meaning? Zhang Kaiyu looked blank. Li Yun raised her head and recalled it, then described, do you know the Dingai Shenzhen? You know, isn't it the one from Monkey Sun? Well, let me ask you, what is the Dingai Shenzhen used for? Of course it's from Dingai. Have you never read Journey to the West? What would be the result if you put the Dingai divine needle in the pond? How is that possible, without giving the pond to? Before Zhang Kaiyu finished speaking, she came to her senses and looked at Li Yun and Li Yun in surprise. Yu Yiren lowered her head to pick vegetables without saying a word. Li Yun sighed, I probably almost broke through 2 small ponds. I didn't mention it in the bathroom yesterday. It just so happens that you are responsible for wearing the clothes today, so you can taste them yourself. Zhang Kaiyu wondered how the meal was cooked today. After keeping the cooked meal warm, she saw Li Yun and Zhang Kaiyu returning to the master bedroom holding their waists like 2 old ladies. She felt a little bad for a moment. Opened his eyes and looked at Suziologo curled up in his arms. There were still tears in the corners of the little Lolita's eyes. It seemed that she didn't feel very good last night. She lowered her head and kissed her. Lin Fan took away his arm from his waist. After getting up and walking to the floor, Yu Yiren and the other 2 people who had just laid down quickly got up and dressed Lin Fan. Picking up the library with an uneasy mood, Zhang Kaiyu buried her head and started busy based on the information she checked yesterday. Walking out of the master bedroom was delayed for a while. After many hours, Zhang Kaiyu was obviously a little more unfamiliar, not as good as Li Yun. It was still early. Lin Fan remembered what happened yesterday and ran out of the supermarket. He picked a random direction and went straight to the world outside the city wall. Yesterday he had already decided, to reward the female warriors with the life force extracted from the corpses. Lin Fan naturally had to go out for a walk, otherwise, wouldn't it be too embarrassing if there was no reward? Before going out, Lin Fan also noticed the many women in the hospital area. He had already expected it. In the past few times, these women had been waiting in the hospital area early. Outside the East City wall, Lin Fan walked around and already had nearly 100 green beads in his hand. The source of life force, these are the crystallization after high-intensity compression, each of which contains all the life force of 10 zombies. The result is indeed as Zhao Yanyan said last night, these energy-containing viruses are used with plant powers. After being extracted, the zombies were like dolls piled up with sand, floating in the wind and turning into dust. With this result, Lin Fan turned around and went straight to the hospital. When he returned to the supermarket, Lin Yuyu and the others were already up. Lin Fan understands that Suziologo is alone. Muyuking and the others didn't even get up on the first day, let alone a legal Lolita. It would be good to see someone tonight. As for life, it is necessary for some ceremonial purposes. Lin Fan specially found 100 exquisitely shaped porcelain vases to pack those source power crystals. In fact, this kind of source power crystal is not simple. I asked the system, and the system's answer was that this thing is just like in the novel. Like the elixir, it can enhance a person's strength and speed up the condensation of qi. Female warriors who have not condensed qi can reach that state faster after taking it. And female warriors who have already condensed qi, such as Li Fengqiao, Su Yan, etc. in the first generation, after taking it, the total amount of qi in the body will be increased, and the concentrated semi-crystals, which are the ones in Lin Fan's hands, will increase even more. The strength of the female warriors will be different, and the improvement given by the source power crystals will also vary. Lo. After breakfast, Lin Fan took the lead to walk downstairs, followed closely by Lin Yuyu, Zhao Wanqing, and others. Today is a new day, and the entire force must open a new chapter. Facing the rising sun, Lin Yuyu, it seems that I have a feeling in my heart, probably starting from today, the entire force will take off. In the hospital area, seeing Lin Fan and his entourage approaching from a distance, groups of female warriors and maids quickly lined up and stood in line. The huge targets were quickly lined up, and at first glance, it was a dark area, full of human heads and slender figures. It is very interesting to say that when the end of the world comes, all women will no longer worry about obesity, and often cannot eat. What to use to lose weight? It would be nice not to be skinny and skinny. Standing in front of the two square formations, Lin Fan glanced over. In the formation on the left, the female warriors held their heads high and stood upright. At a glance, their slim waists were beautiful, and they looked like ridges and peaks on the side. The sun's rays shone on the women's faces, making them radiant and indescribably heroic. If you follow what Lin Yuyu said, and all wear uniforms, white boots, white combat uniforms, and white military caps, it will definitely be a visual feast. Not only Lin Fan was looking at the women in the phalanx, but also the female warriors and maids in the two phalanxes were looking at Lin Fan. The only man in the entire force, the deified Lord, was also standing. A man at the pinnacle of power. Regardless of whether they are willing or not, regardless of their beauty or ugliness, almost all women are looking forward to being able to offer themselves pillow seats. The maids want to live a good life, but the female warriors have many ideas and different thoughts. Some want to live a good life, some want to gain divine power, and some just want to sleep with God. Lin Fan glanced around and took in the women's expressions. Lin Fan could see the excitement in these women's eyes and their anticipation for what was going to happen next. Lin Fan is not a person who likes to talk nonsense. He prefers to be direct, which saves everyone trouble. As for long-winded brainwashing propaganda, let Lin Yuyu do that. There is no other purpose today. You must have known it last night. The new class system, the new ecosystem, the new currency, the new promotion mechanism. This is a fairly equal start. I hope you can work hard and become human beings. Master. After Lin Fan said this, the morale of the women in the two square formations became even higher. Turning their heads, raising their arms and spreading their palms, Lin Yuyu put a document in Lin Fan's hand and took it. Afterwards, Lin Fan opened the document, looked at the clear handwriting on it, raised his head and said, "Next is the commendation meeting," and the female warrior whose name was read stepped forward. After Lin Fan finished speaking, the hearts of the female warriors all jumped, knowing that the main event was coming. Li Fengqiao. Li Fengqiao, who was at the front of the crowd, was shocked. Even though she had already guessed it, when Lin Fan called her name, Li Fengqiao still couldn't hide her excitement. Arrive. Zhu Fangfang. Arrive. Su Yan. Arrive. After reading 16 names in a row, these 16 female warriors were the original first-generation female warriors. Looking at Li Fengqiao and others standing at the front with their heads held high, Lin Fan still vaguely remembered at this time that the backs of 16 of them were standing on a pile of corpses several meters high, killing the zombies who wanted to rush into the hospital one by one. Kill, forming an impenetrable line of defense. Your efforts, step by step, are all in my heart. From today on, in the name of the Supreme Ruler, I appoint you as Squadron Leader, Class Sequence LV-4. After the combat uniforms and medals are made, I will personally serve you. You wear medals. The long-awaited moment finally arrived. When they heard these words spoken by Lin Fanzhen, Li Fengqiao and others' minds went blank and their hearts were beating fast. After a long time, they half knelt on the ground and said in unison, "Bow down and do your best." Willing to give his last drop of blood for the mainstream. Looking at the 16 women half kneeling on the ground, Lin Fan nodded, "Everyone, get up. From today on, you have a new code name, the Judgment Warrior, who, in the name of God, judges all living beings. These are rewards for you." As he spoke, Lin Fan waved his hand, and 16 porcelain bottles appeared out of thin air. Li Fengqiao and others who were half kneeling on the ground were also helped up by invisible forces. Curiously, they took the porcelain bottles that flew in front of them, and Su Yan and others looked at each other. Didn't even understand what was inside. Taking in the doubts of the girls, Lin Fan smiled and said, "This is a source of power crystal. After you take it, your strength will increase to a certain extent. You can try it by taking it." After hearing Lin Fan's words, Li Fengqiao and others' eyes lit up. They couldn't wait to pull off the lid, took out the green semi-crystalline substance inside, and then drank it without hesitation. Lin Fan glanced over and took the attributes of Li Fengqiao and others. Panoramic view. Character, Li Fengqiao. Strength, 31. Agility, 35. Intelligence, 19. Physique, 38. Faith value, 100, Die Loyal. Ability, Sword Chi. Character, Zhu Fangfang. Strength, 30. Agility, 33. Intelligence, 18. Physique, 35. Faith value, 100, Die Loyal. Ability, Sword Chi. Character, Su Yan. Strength, 32. Agility, 34. Intelligence, 20. Physique, 33. Faith value, 100, Die Loyal. Ability, Sword Chi. Among the 16 female warriors, the 3 are the most powerful, and the remaining 10 or so have barely reached 30 points. But don't underestimate the difference between these 2 points. The further you go, the slower the improvement in strength becomes. Just 1 point difference may determine the final victory or defeat. The 16 people drank the source power crystal together. They were very calm at first. Soon, surging source power surged in the 16 people's bodies. The concentrated source power circulated in the 16 people's bodies like a torrent, non-stop. The strength of Li Fengqiao and others was greatly improved. Waves of powerful momentum spread, and the dust on the ground scattered. The heavy air pressure made the female warriors not far away unbearable and retreated. There was a look of shock on his face. This bit of pressure was nothing to Lin Fan. He kept looking at the attributes of the 16 people. Looking at the soaring attributes, Lin Fan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This effect is too strong. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Da. Chapter 142. A real new chapter opens in chapter 142, the new abilities of the female warriors, must read. As the system said, although these concentrated source power crystals have no effect on him, and are of little use to Lin Yu and the others, for a female warrior who has no superpowers and whose strength improves slowly, it is as exaggerated as if a supermaster suddenly took a small pill and increased his skill for 10 years. Although that source power crystal did not double the attributes of these first-generation female warriors, the degree of improvement was terrifying. It is more concentrated and purer, and it also contains a trace of plant-type supernatural energy. Although there is only a trace of this high-level power, it is enough to bring considerable improvement to female warriors like Li Fengxiao. The momentum continued to rise, and the spreading coercion caused the originally solid ground to crack with cracks like spider webs. The phalanx of female warriors at the rear, which was originally only 1 meter away from Li Fengxiao and others, now has the momentum of 16 people. Down, he suddenly retreated more than 4 or 5 meters. These female warriors are not ordinary maids. The closer they stand, the stronger they are. But even so, these female warriors were still forced back by the aura released by Li Fengxiao and others for 4 or 5 times. This is terrifying. This improvement has directly opened a huge gap between the strength of Li Fengxiao and others and those second and third generation female warriors. And this kind of terrifying improvement also made the eyes of many female warriors in the phalanx flash with fanatical light. The treasures given are so powerful, who wouldn't want to be given these treasures? Soon, the momentum began to decline. After completely digesting the power contained in the source power crystal, Li Fengxiao and others finally woke up. The agitated momentum was withdrawn. The eyes of the 16 women headed by Li Fengxiao opened, with shock and excitement in their eyes. Excited expression. The strength has improved a lot. The energy in the body has at least doubled. Li Fengxiao exclaimed, a strange light flashed in her eyes. Moreover, it seems that she broke through some shackles, reached a new realm, and realized new abilities. As if in disbelief, Li Fengxiao clenched her fists and exhaled loudly. A wave of air surged, followed by waves of gang qi that condensed on the surface of her body to form a transparent barrier, up to an inch thick. The gang qi in front of Li Fengxiao, the barrier seemed to be moving. The translucent barrier was so dense that the female warriors in the rear phalanx could clearly see that Li Fengxiao was surrounded by a translucent eggshell, and the ground beneath her feet collided with the ganqi. The splashing gang qi tore the ground apart. Hiss. Awesome, what is this? Ganqi. Is this the innate power in the novel? It's just that the thickness is relatively poor. When will it reach 3 feet of ganqi? Is it possible to find Wuming, who is still alive, to try Wanjian Gazong? The eyes of the female warriors at the rear were all shining brightly. They were all masters of all kinds of tricks. Jasmine, Wang Ziwen, Lu Yuer and others in the crowd had shock in their eyes and unspeakable envy in their hearts. At the end of the team, yesterday the new additions Wu Menfei and Lu Minjia were dumbfounded. They also learned your sister's fencing, your sister's taekwondo, and your sister's karate, coach. I want to learn this. With Li Fengxiao at the front, Zhu Fangfang, Su Yan, and others no longer doubted their own feelings. The aura in their bodies was surging, and translucent gang qi instantly condensed on the body surface. The dense gang qi was so powerful that as soon as Pu appeared, the ground cracked. Standing among the women ahead, watching the new abilities displayed by Li Fengxiao and others, Lin Fan nodded secretly. Every time these female warriors broke through the shackles, they were moving towards becoming stronger. Although there was a big gap compared to the abilities he taught, and the improvement, it is more difficult to learn, but it is still a way for civilians to advance. Superpowers cannot be taught casually to anyone, even diehards. They must become his woman, and those who are not qualified are not without the possibility of becoming stronger. The first generation like Li Fengjiao are the benchmark. With the current level of concentration of Gangqi, non-sniper rifle bullets cannot break through the defense. Even like those female warriors, one day 3 feet of Gangqi are condensed on the side of the body. Even cannons cannot break through these Gangqi. The reason why ancient martial arts has declined in today's society is because thermal weapons are too strong. No matter how powerful your ancient martial arts is, I will kill you with one shot from 10 meters away. A gun is faster than 7 steps away, and a punch is quick within 7 steps. This is not as simple as it sounds, but with the strong energy in these novels, hot weapons are not irresistible. With a slight smile on his face, Lin Fan scanning his eyes, the attributes of Li Fengjiao and others appeared in front of him. Character, Li Fengjiao. Strength, 44. Agility, 42. Intelligence, 25. Physique, 46. Faith value, 100, die loyal. Abilities, sword qi, qi condensation. Character, Zhu Fangfang. Strength, 42. Agility, 40. Intelligence, 23. Physique, 44. Faith value, 100, die loyal. Abilities, sword qi, qi condensation. Character, Su Yan. Strength, 42. Agility, 43. Intelligence, 26. Physique, 45. Faith value, 100, die loyal. Abilities, sword qi, qi condensation. The attributes have almost increased by more than 1/3, and the effect of the concentrated source power crystallization is terrifying, especially the newly added ability of qi condensation, which gives Li Fengjiao and others the capital to resist thermal weapons. This represents the beginning of a new era. From now on, there is no need for matrons such as Lin Yuyu and Zhao Wanqing to carry them in front. These female warriors can gather their energy and then withstand the hail of bullets, killing all the troops. Sooner or later, we will have to face the military. As the largest force in all major countries, the military will always be a hurdle that cannot be overcome unless we give up the idea of dominating the world. The emergence of Gangqi gave the female warriors the capital to deal with hot weapons, which also made Lin Fan feel relieved. Otherwise, when a war begins, a lot of female warriors will die. Now he doesn't have to worry. Li Fengjiao's breakthrough is not the end. Soon the second and third generations of female warriors will catch up. Even in order to catalyze the progress of these female warriors, he can also work harder and use the corpses of those zombies. All turned into source power crystals. Anyway, these corpses will be burned if they are kept. It is better to use them as waste, which can also reduce pollution. After all, corpses will stink if left for a long time. It would be bad if any new viruses breed. After coming back to his senses, Lin Fan smiled slightly when he looked at Li Fengjiao and others who were still in a state of excitement. To be honest, looking at these women, he felt very accomplished. Once upon a time, even those like Li Fengjiao, who were above average, could not be considered above average. The improvement in strength made these women more beautiful. The most important thing was that they had a heroic spirit that was not to be outdone by women. If it is a perfect score of 10, if so, Lin Fan could give Li Fengjiao and the others 8.5 points or more. Even these women with a score of 8.5 or above cannot be owned by him before the end, even if the other party is tired of playing and wants to find an honest man, but now, looking at it, there are very few female warriors with a score below 8. Watching these female warriors with a score of 8 or above becoming stronger under his hands, Lin Fan really felt a sense of accomplishment, especially when the other party asked for everything. With just a look from her, the other party could immediately offer themselves a pillow, even if it was a multiplayer sport. I don't mind at all. Men are all vain, Lin Fan is very vulgar, and he also likes the sense of vanity, but there are women like Lin Yu who started with a score of 9.5, so he just doesn't like these women. It's not bad to just eat it for eye candy. Didn't you say that looking at beautiful women can prolong your life? Don't worry about the issue of immortality, just look good. No one can escape the law of long and thin waist and large non-paper, unless he is gay. Keep your excitement to yourself in private. Please step back first. Time is precious. Looking at the excited smiling faces of women like Li Fengxiao, Lin Fan was in a good mood, and his eyes couldn't help but curl up. After coming back to his senses, Li Fengxiao and others knew that they were a little too excited, so they quickly bowed their heads and saluted, and then retreated into the queue. Looking at the expectant looks of the women, Lin Fan laughed and said, I know what you are expecting. The rewards are not over yet. Next, those whose names I call will come out. Wang Ziwen. In the crowd, Wang Ziwen was suddenly excited and reacted immediately. Arrive. Lu Yuer. Lu Yuer, who was restless in her heart, was shocked and immediately walked out of the team. Arrive. Qin Shihua. Arrive. Han Jing'ai. Arrive. Lin Fan read dozens more names in succession, closed the folder in his hand, looked at the dozens of female warriors standing upright in front of him, and glanced at Wang Ziwen and others. I remember you, or some of you left a little impression on me. A person whose virginity was betrayed, but who acted very decisively. As for Lu Yuer and you three, I still remember you three and I play devil's advocate. To be honest, if you had dared to jump, maybe I would have looked down upon you. When Lin Fan called them by name, Wang Ziwen and Lu Yuer's faces immediately turned pale. This was simply a public execution. However, Lin Fan changed his voice and continued, you can save the Green Hills without worrying about having firewood. If you had made different choices, maybe you wouldn't be where you are today, and you wouldn't have the glory you have now. One drink and one peck has its own destiny. I see all your efforts, including all of you. What you have done and how many military exploits you have achieved, I can all count. Don't forget, everything you have is given by me. From today on, you will be promoted to level 3 squad leader. As he said that, Lin Fan raised his index finger and nodded his head. This action made many female warriors feel shuddered and proud at the same time. After all, God was watching them. With a wave of his hand, dozens of a porcelain bottle flew in front of Wang Ziwen and others. In a few days, these women made great progress, especially Wang Ziwen, Lu Yuer and others who performed well. They even crossed the first stage and possessed sword energy. But it was only after they had just crossed that stage. After taking the source power crystal, Wang Ziwen and others could barely reach Zhu Fangfang's previous standards, and even many attributes did not exceed 30 points. If they wanted to condense Gangqi, they still had to. It would take some time. After Wang Ziwen and others retreated, Lin Fan spoke again under the expectant eyes of the female warriors. Zhou Ziyan. Inside the small square of dark fragrance bar, Zhou Ziyan quickly walked out. Arrive. Jasmine. Arrive. Yerulin. Arrive. Lu Minjiao. At the end of the female warrior, Lu Minjiao looked confused, and her big eyes were full of doubts. When did she become superior? Just when she was confused, Wu Menfei quickly pushed her. Arrive. Looking at the girl in front of him who looked almost like Yu Yiren, Lin Fan nodded and said nothing. Last night, my mother was treated in the bathroom. A woman with some Jiangnan water town flavor is really good. Lin Fan will naturally receive some preferential treatment if he is recommended by name. Not to mention fair or unfair, he has the final say in this power. His words are the truth here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Doomsday. Chapter 143. Chapter 143, Surreal Doomsday. Here, I, Lin Fan, am the law. Not only Lu Minjiao, but also Wu Menfei and several other Baifume were named by Lin Fan. In the phalanx of female warriors, there are countless female warriors with envy or even jealousy in their eyes. This look is especially obvious in the phalanx of maids. Zhou Ziyuan and the others obviously arrived later. As for Lu Minjiao and Wu Menfei, they were only brought to the female warriors by the senior management yesterday. They did not show any superior performance at all, but everyone knew that Lin Fan had the final say here. And there are people above, who can be promoted faster than everyone else. This is true before the end of the world, let alone after the end of the world. Looking at a dozen women walking out, Lin Fan handed the folder in his hand to Lin Yuyu. That was pretty much all he needed to do, and the rest almost had nothing to do with him. Zhou Ziyuan, owner of Dark Fragrance Bar, Zhao Wangqing's best friend, I heard your name from Wangqing. She said you were very good, so I gave you this opportunity. Your recent performance is indeed good. Zhou Ziyuan subconsciously glanced at Zhao Wangqing, who was standing behind Lin Fan, with gratitude in her beautiful eyes. Jasmine, a person from the Dark Fragrance Bar, a forced professional killer. Yu and I recommended you. At the beginning, I was amazed. Your performance later on has really made killing an art. Work hard and I will too. Look after you. Jasmine is a person who repays her kindness, otherwise she would not have followed Zhou Ziyuan for so long. After hearing Lin Fan's words, her eyes were full of gratitude to Lin Yuyu and Lin Fan. Lin Yuyu saved her and gave her a new life. And helped her kill her enemy Wang Kui, while Lin Fan gave her a new opportunity and a better start. His eyes shifted, looking at the graceful figure next to Jasmine, especially the fierce Yerulan. Thinking of the situation a few days ago, Lin Fan wanted to laugh, but Lin Fan didn't laugh, and Yerulan had a hard time enduring it. Yerulan is also from the Angxiang Bar. To be honest, the Angxiang Bar is really full of talents. Unlike your boss and Jasmine, you are the first one to have sex with me since the end of the world, or in such a long life. You are very courageous. The brave will be starved to death and the timid will starve to death. I remember you, so I will give you a chance. It depends on whether you can live up to your expectations or not. Yerulan feels indescribably now. Lin Fan healed her injury at that time, and Lin Fan was very handsome. In the power of the hospital, she will either die alone in her life, or be favored by Lin Fan. There is no third choice. Her mind was aflame, and she blurted out the words of touching porcelain, but she didn't expect to have the opportunity now, and she was indescribably happy in her heart. Listening to Lin Fan's story, many women recalled Yerulan's bold actions at that time. Looking at Yerulan's back, he felt indescribable envy. This is how this society is. If you don't even dare to show off, you can only remain unknown. Lin Fan didn't know what Yerulan was thinking. He shifted his gaze slightly and looked at Lu Minjiao, who was still a little confused. This girl is really dumbfounded. Her eyes and delicate skin are very similar to her mother. Lu Minjiao, Baifume from Zhongyuan Villa District, I don't know your merits. The only thing you should be grateful for is that you have a good mother. She has saved you a lot of hardships and walked a lot of roads. Your life, I am very lucky to be born with a golden key in my mouth. Now that I have just come here, I have a good starting point. Having said this, Lin Fan pointed to the female warriors in the rear and the maid camp in another phalanx. You are many times luckier than them. Work hard and don't let down your mother's efforts. Lu Minjiao's eyes were hot, and she was indescribably moved when she looked at Yu Yiren, who was at the bottom of the queue. However, Yu Yiren didn't have so many ideas. If the place wasn't suitable, she would have wanted to beat her waist. It was so sore. I can hardly stand anymore. I haven't eaten meat for 10 years, and I almost died once. It's so comfortable. Lin Fan didn't pay attention to this little episode. He looked at Wu Menfei standing next to Lu Minjiao. This woman Lin Fan Muyuking once mentioned that it takes skill to lead a group of rich second-generation Baifume with 2 brushes. Everyone is Baifume, so why should they obey you? It all depends on strength. Wu Menfei, the leader of the beauties in Zhongyuan Villa district, including you beauties, you are lucky to have a good bestie. After Lin Fan finished speaking, Wu Menfei and others subconsciously looked at Lu Minjiao beside them, feeling indescribably happy in their hearts. If it hadn't been for Lu Minjiao, they would still be farming. If it hadn't been for Lu Minjiao, what would have happened to them in the current roll call reward? With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen porcelain bottles flew out. After doing all this, Lin Fan said, you are all promoted under special circumstances, or are objects to be observed. Your level remains unchanged, and you are still level 2. The road has been paved. If you still climb, if you don't go up, it only means that you are trash, and trash doesn't need more attention. Come back to the team. Picking up the porcelain vase in their hands, Zhou Ziyan and others bowed their heads in salute, and then returned to the group. After the awards were awarded, Lin Fan glanced across the 2 camps, and his cold gaze made all the women lower their heads subconsciously. Now is a new beginning. If you are not willing to be at the bottom, then work hard. You will not be able to imagine the luxurious life that the top people have, and you will not be able to imagine the rights of the top people. There is law before the apocalypse, but after the apocalypse, where I am, the higher UPS are the law. It's the law. If you want to become an enforcer of the law, work hard to climb up. Simple and crude, the top is the law. This is the most stringent class system. It can even be understood as an aristocratic class system. Although it is very harsh, it will undoubtedly inspire everyone's determination to climb up. Lin Fan will not be afraid of anything so-called people harm others, intrigues, and the most basic laws still exist. Arbitration panels and reviewers will not let certain outrageous things happen. If someone really naively thinks that he can do whatever he wants if he is in a high position, the arbitration panel will let him those women know what a real high-level person is. After doing all this, Lin Fan waved his hand, and a large silver box full of technology appeared next to him. He snapped his fingers, and the big silver box opened, filled with a black watch. You should be curious about what these are. I can tell you now that these black watches not only allow you to tell the time, but also have positioning functions and the most important counting function. How many zombies you have killed will be displayed on this watch. It shows how much salary you can get every month in the future. Having said this, Lin Fan took a step back and pulled Lin Yuyu in front of him. Next, Lin Yuyu will be responsible for issuing these devices to you. Some follow-up activities and talent selection will be the responsibility of everyone in the arbitration team. All outing activities will be temporarily suspended today, treat it as a rare vacation, and enjoy it. The big silver box contains not only the more than 700 counters that were redeemed yesterday. Lin Fan redeemed another 1,000 this morning, and the 10,000 points were just gone. Having more of these items is not a big problem. After all, the number of female warriors will continue to increase. In addition, there are also 1,000 tang knives, and another 10,000 points. Originally more than 40,000, now only 24,580 are left. I will probably spend more in the future. Of course, the points will come faster. Pay with 20 points, the harvest will be dozens or hundreds of times. For example, Li Fengqiao, who only had Tang Dao with 10 points at the beginning, has now killed at least thousands of zombies. This is because the hospital is located in a relatively remote location, and there are not many zombies nearby. The reason? Look 10 kilometers away, there are more zombies there. Now there are zombies outside the city wall. The area that Zhao Wanqing and the others went out to clean up before has already been filled with zombies. Finish everything that needs to be done. Lin Fan turned around and planned to walk back to the supermarket. Everyone had a rest today. As LV9, he couldn't go out to kill zombies, right? As LV9, shouldn't he just slump on the sofa and be a salty fish? Passing by Li Yun and Yu Yiren when he was next to him, he saw that the faces of the two women were a little pale. Although the charming light in the corners of their eyes seemed very contented, their auras were still a little weak. Standing with the two women standing in a somewhat inconvenient posture, Lin Fan immediately understood that even if the two women had lived alone for many years, they are ordinary people after all. How can they withstand such a collision, and they are not women like Lin Yuyu and others with a physique of 70 or 80. Seeing Lin Fan suddenly stop in front of him, Li Yun and Yu Yiren were stunned for a moment. They all didn't understand why Lin Fan stopped. Was he planning to call them back? Thinking of this, the two women's pale faces became a little dizzy, and they felt a little scared in their hearts. They are really not doing well now. Host, Lord, do you need us to serve you back? Listening to Yu Yiren's timid tone, Lin Fan couldn't help but shook his head. It's okay if you don't say this. I wonder if this tone will make men want to bully you more easily. He raised his hand and patted Yu Yi and Li Yun on the shoulders. On the body, the plant energy full of life circulated in their bodies. Instantly, the two women's waists were no longer sore, their legs no longer hurt, and they no longer felt uncomfortable standing. Next time you feel uncomfortable, tell me earlier. You are suffering the consequences for yourself. Although I am not a good person, I am not to the extent of torturing you for fun. After all, I am still a person who serves me, and I still have the status I deserve. Lin Fan didn't hide anything, and his voice was calm. When Yu Yi and Li Yun heard it, they felt indescribably moved in their hearts. Thank you Lord for your concern. Okay, you can continue your work, I'll go back first. Waving his hand, Lin Fan walked back to the supermarket step by step. He didn't plan to use any abilities. He had to use his abilities for a few steps. It was so boring. He was not an old man who was about to retire. Back to the supermarket, Zhang Kaiyu hurriedly ran into the living room. Come over and kneel on the ground to change Lin Fan's slippers. I don't know why, maybe it's the after effects of the morning. As she knelt in front of Lin Fan, Zhang Kaiyu couldn't help but blush. Her throat, which had been much better after drinking some water, also started to feel aggravated. It hurts. Lin Fan didn't know what Zhang Kaiyu was thinking. He walked to the living room and found that Suzyalogo had already gotten up on the sofa. He was huddled on the sofa with a sad face, and his whole body was like a small ball. Curiously, he walked to sitting next to her. Lin Fan took her into his arms, pinched her little face, and asked, "Why are you so sad?" The relationship improved by leaps and bounds last night. Suzyalogo was obviously more dependent on Lin Fan. He nuzzled into Lin Fan's arms like a kitten and said bitterly, "I have a stomachache." Stomachache. Lin Fan subconsciously put his hand on Suzyalogo's belly, his plant powers started to work, and he wondered, isn't this nothing wrong? Why does my stomach hurt? Plant powers contain life energy. It can be said that many diseases can be cured without medicine, but under Lin Fan's examination, Suzyalogo was obviously not sick. Pouting his beak, Suzyalogo raised his hand and beat it in Lin Fan's arms. Twice, muttered, "It's not the pain." "What is that?" "It's not you yet. One step reaches my stomach, every step reaches my stomach. How can I not feel uncomfortable? I'm only 146, and I'm only 150 when I put on shoes. Don't you know how tall you are?" Equivalent. Lin Fan scratched his head, as if it was indeed his fault at first, but can he be blamed later? You are short and you can blame me for being tall? Damn. It doesn't make sense. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Doomsday. Chapter 144. Chapter 144, The shocked military pilot, the one who is willing to take the bait is coming. Rumble. In the distant horizon, dispatched late at night, two Wuzzy planes coming from the suburbs are approaching from a distance. They are more than 10 kilometers apart. The driver can see it from high altitude. The majestic city wall spanning 20 kilometers, the black and gray city wall has an indescribable shock and heaviness, as if it has traveled from ancient times, and a condensed sense of atmosphere and history hits the face. Holy shit! What is this? Does Magic City have such a thing? If the current coordinates were not for the Magic City, I would have doubted that I had driven to the ancient city. What is this? Listening to the roar of the main pilot, the co-pilot was also confused. What is this? Why is there such a large wall in the Magic City? He had been here before the end, and he didn't remember the Magic City. They all have such magnificent city walls. Among other things, zombies can attack such a high wall. It is simply an insurmountable chasm. Isn't this funny? The soldiers in the cabin were also confused. Good guy, if I hadn't pinched it, others would have screamed in pain, and they all suspected they were dreaming. Nightingale number 1, Nightingale number 1, have you seen the city wall in front of you? The call from another Wuzzy came from the headset, and the main pilot cursed, "Fuck, I'm not blind. How can I not see such a big city wall? Depend on. I thought there was something wrong with my eyesight. When did the Magic City have such a magnificent city wall? On such a large scale, it could only be dozens of kilometers away, right? How much manpower and material resources will this cost? Even if you use machinery, you can't make it in half a year, right? Who the hell are you asking me? Anyway, I visited here 2 weeks before the end, and I didn't see any city walls. This is outrageous. It's like seeing a fucking ghost." The main pilots of the two helicopters kept complaining to each other and venting their shock. At this time, the co-pilot of Nightingale 1 suddenly said, "Do you think this thing is a mirage?" After the co-pilot finished speaking, the main pilot suddenly turned his head with pity in his eyes. "My child has no use for his eyes. It is recommended that he donate them to those in need. Are your eyes wet? Can't you see so many zombies being kept out under the city wall? Can a mirage still have this effect?" It happened that Wu Ji flew over the city wall. The co-pilot looked down and shrugged angrily. The main pilot shook his head and stopped paying attention to the co-pilot's funny comment. He glanced at the coordinates on the instrument panel and pulled the button. "Turn on the earphone and say Nightingale number 2, Nightingale number 2, please answer when you receive it. Please answer when you receive it. Nightingale number 2 has been received. Nightingale number 2 has been received. Please give instructions. There is still 1 kilometer away from the designated target point and we are ready to land at any time. Nightingale 2 has been received and can land at any time." Wow! What the hell is this? There was a sudden voice, and the main pilot of Nightingale 1 almost pulled off the steering column without being frightened. Before he started spraying, the exclamation of the main pilot of Nightingale 2 came from the earphones. "Damn it, what's going on in the inner city? Why aren't there any zombies? And the road is too clean, right? Nightingale number 1, Nightingale number 1, be careful, something is not right." The main driver of Nightingale 1 no longer had the previous anger. Through the window, he also saw the strange situation in the inner city. There was not a single zombie on the street, and there was not even a congested and abandoned vehicle on the street. No. Especially the streets seemed to have been cleaned. It couldn't be said to be very clean, at least not messy at all. This is really scary. Is this the end of the world? Isn't it? What they saw along the way was everywhere. It was still smoke that had not been extinguished. Occasionally, there would be a sudden explosion. The streets were filled with zombies. Various vehicles either hit the wall next to them or hit other vehicles. In short, they were all in disorder, completely blocking the originally spacious street. It is impossible to pass normally. This is the end. This is what they should see, or think it is normal, but they see the city wall. After entering, everything becomes very strange and confusing. There are no zombies. Even there were no survivors waving to them from the top of the high-rise buildings. No, nothing. The huge city wall was like a ghost town. It was so strange that it even made these determined soldiers feel a little scared. Cold. Damn, what's going on? The pilot of Nightingale No. 1 cursed secretly and searched hard, but found nothing. Hussy, we are almost there, do we want to land? The co-pilot suddenly spoke at this time. The main pilot Yu Hao looked at the cleaned research institute not far away, gritted his teeth, and said in a deep voice, "Land, this is the general's order, let us do it no matter what. Take Dr. Yang back." Yu Hao's military rank is not low, or the driver's military rank is generally not low. The order he received was to come to Magic City to pick up Dr. Yang, so he had to do it. The two helicopters found a suitable place and landed one after another. The cabin door opening it, the soldiers of the two teams jumped out one after another. Pushing open the door of the cab, Yu Hao loudly said to the members of the two teams, "Major Liu Yang, please rush back as soon as possible. The situation in the inner city is different, and the helicopter will shut down and be ready to take off at any time." Major Liu Yang, who took the lead, also noticed that something was wrong. He nodded, waved to the soldiers behind him, quickly walked into the door, and then found the underground passage. As a direct descendant of Lu Jingyu, Liu Yang has been here before. People here even know what kind of experiments are being carried out. After all, he was the one who led the team to bring Yang Yiping here for the first time. On the surface, it is nothing, but in fact, it is a research institute underground. Here is Liu Yiping. A research laboratory funded by Jingyu was established. Liu Yang didn't know what the specific research was. Sometimes it's not a good thing to know too much. Liu Yang led the team all the way to the underground research room. As soon as he led the team and rushed in, he realized that something was wrong. The research institute was too quiet, there was no one, even until the research room, he found no trace of anyone, except for the corpses of some zombies. Looking at the messy traces around and the dirty blood on the ground, Liu Yang knew something must have happened. He went straight to the innermost research laboratory, opened the door, and glanced around, but did not find a single figure. He strode to the experimental table and looked at the debris on the floor, and Liu Yang subconsciously picked up one of the experimental reports, and his eyes widened immediately. Even though he knew that the things in this institute were not simple, he also knew the general content, but so many in vivo experiments still shocked him. Yes, when he brought Yang Yiping over, he knew something. After all, the military region was still too sensitive if they wanted to conduct in vivo experiments. Even if Lu Jingyu was a lieutenant general and had Lu Yuan been the commander-in-chief of the military region, no. Boom. 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 The sudden muffled sound startled Liu Yang. He quickly threw the documents aside and raised his gun vigilantly to look in the direction of the sound. The soldiers around him also raised their guns. Weapons, and then they saw it. In a glass petri dish, a humanoid figure was banging against the glass door crazily. The reason why they didn't notice it at first was because the glass door was covered in blood, and they couldn't see the details inside. If it weren't for the sudden impact, they wouldn't have noticed it in a short time. What? Zombies? Liu. Yang cursed secretly, put down the gun in his hand, and stepped forward with his arms raised. The soldiers around him followed behind with their guns raised. As he got closer, he looked at the white coat on the other side that was almost stained with blood. There was also a face that was almost deformed, but some features could still be seen. Liu Yang was confused. Isn't this Professor Yang Yiping? What did this guy do? How did he achieve this? Is the scientific madman so strong? Dare to do live experiments on himself? Based on his understanding of Yang Yiping, this guy is a scientific madman, selfish and ruthless, but he will never play such a big role on himself. But what is the situation now? Just when Liu Yang was puzzled, Lin Fan, who was far away on the second floor of the hospital supermarket, sensed the movement caused by the two helicopters driving straight in and the early warning of opening the door of the research room. On the sofa, he was holding Suzyalogo for a while. Lin Fan paused for a moment, and subconsciously let go of the hand holding her white silk feet. Suzyalogo, who had a pale face, raised his head and looked at Lin Fan in confusion. He didn't understand why he was fine and suddenly let go. Drive her. Brother, what's wrong? Wu Nong said softly. Suzyalogo's voice was like adding sugar. Lin Fan came back to his senses, looked at Suzyalogo's fair and tender face, lowered his head and kissed her, and said softly, Luologo, stay at home. Yes, I have something to go out to solve some things. Zhang Taigong is fishing, and sure enough, there are still fish that will take the bait. Grabbing Lin Fan's collar with his little hands, Suzyalogo raised his head and kissed Lin Fan on the cheek. Although he said that Lin Fan was too big, Suzyalogo still liked Lin Fan very much. He liked him for a second. He didn't want to separate, otherwise he wouldn't be separated in the morning. Not long after Lin Fan left, he got up. After pinching Suzyalogo's face, Lin Fan got up from the sofa, walked quickly to the balcony, and jumped out of the window. For in the research institute, Lin Fan was not unwary. On the one hand, he wanted to prevent Yang Yiping from mutating, so that he could know it immediately and kill him. On the other hand, he wanted to wait for people from the military region to come over. Yang Yiping kept it. It works, but I don't know if it can be used. Now it seems that it can be used. There is electromagnetic induction on the door of the research institute. Whether it is opened from the inside or entered from the outside, it will even close Yang Yiping's culture tank. Those few times Lin Fan knocked at the beginning were leaving marks. As long as someone moved, Lin Fan would be able to sense it immediately. Wang Xiaoming's wingsuit flying target was too small, but he still had such a big target. Lin Fan knew immediately when he came to the inner city and disturbed the magnetic field induction in the inner city, which was why he came out. Flying in the air, he felt that the door of the research institute was opened, and a light flashed in Lin Fan's eyes, and the figure a few minutes faster again, like a stream of light directly across the sky, it appeared like a phantom next to the two helicopters. The pilots of Nightingale 1 and Nightingale 2 were startled when they saw Lin Fan, who appeared like a ghost. Just as Yu Hao was about to say something, he saw Lin Fan raise his hand and a green light floated over. Then he couldn't say anything, and his eyes became hazy and lost focus. In their eyes, a green light dots emit light invisible to the human eye. Spores are very useful at certain times. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Gugu Da. Chapter 145. Chapter 145 Spore Parasitism, the Birth of New Life. Lin Fan had learned about spores before. It was quite interesting, no, it should be said to be a very scary thing. The explanation of spores in the encyclopedia is a germ cell that can directly or indirectly develop into a new individual after being separated from the parent. It is the product of mitosis or meiosis. There is no need to say more about the following content, mainly focus on the first half. After being separated from the main body, cells can develop into new individuals. Of course, this is talking about plants. In Lin Fan's case, it is not just a simple new individual. The spores contain plant-type energy and a little bit of Lin Fan's mental power. In other words, this spore can be controlled by Lin Fan. The spores carrying Lin Fan's mental power invaded the minds of these pilots like viruses. From the moment the spores parasitized into their bodies, they no longer "it's me." The spore is like a remote surveillance camera and remote control. Lin Fan can control these drivers through this spore cell, and can also see everything these people see through their eyes. And what these pilots see can only be what Lin Fan wants them to see. The simplest reason is that even if there is a woman doing a striptease in front of them, and Lin Fan doesn't want them to see it, the spores will block the nerve perception in their eyes and they can see nothing. After doing this, Lin Fan shook his head and looked at the distracted pilots of the two was Hili, then turned and walked into the underground research institute. There is no right or wrong in this world. The only difference lies in which side you take. History is always written by the winner. The winner is righteous, while the loser is evil. If you want to live and live better, the only way is it means killing the enemy who is against you, otherwise you will be the one who dies. This is true before the end, and it will be true after the end. In the Underground Research Institute, Lin Fan walked all the way. All the doors leading directly to the research room were opened. He walked unhurriedly to the innermost laboratory. Standing at the door, Lin Fan saw more than a dozen people with their backs to him. Soldiers, but these soldiers knew nothing about Lin Fan's arrival. In front of the culture tank, Lu Yang looked at the almost human-like Yang Yiping in the culture tank through the glass door. Lu Yang had a very ugly expression on his face. Although he disliked this lunatic, he had to admit that the other party was real. Otherwise, Lu Jingyu would not take him so seriously. But now, this madman has played himself to death. What should he do? Yang Yiping has obviously turned into a zombie. How will he explain it when he goes back? Tell the commander-in-chief that Yang Yiping killed himself by conducting human experiments on himself? Or take this body back? Gan. Isn't this difficult for him? Lu Yang didn't need to have a headache. Lin Fan had already figured out what to do for him. With a wave of his hand, the light green light penetrated into the bodies of more than a dozen soldiers. The dozen or so soldiers standing in front of the culture tank, including Lu Yang, had blurred pupils and stood blankly in front of the culture tank like puppets. Bypassing these soldiers, Lin Fan walked to the glass door. Looking at Yang Yiping, who had almost no trace of normal human appearance, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Your master has sent someone to find you. In this case, I will give you your research results. Show your master a good look." Lightning flashed and the electronic lock of the glass door was destroyed. Yang Yiping, who was locked inside, smelled the smell of a living person and was about to rush out immediately, but he was beaten out one by one. The vines were firmly trapped in place. The vines were like needles extracting the virus from Yang Yiping's body, and then pierced into the bodies of soldiers like Lu Yang. After doing all this, Lin Fan snapped his fingers, and Lu Yang and the others, who were like dolls, woke up one after another. Visual perception was affected, and Lu Yang and others couldn't see anything wrong with Yang Yiping at this time. Under Lin Fan's influence, what these people saw was the normal picture of Yang Yiping virtualized by Lin Fan. In fact, standing in front of them was Yang Yiping, who had stopped roaring but was still terrifying. Frowning at Yang Yiping's current appearance, Lin Fan spent some points to exchange for a cloak. From the outside, it looked strange at most to be wearing a cloak, but Yang Yiping's terrifying appearance could not be seen. Returning to the ground, he followed the same pattern as the four pilots. Lin Fan watched the helicopter take off, and did not look back until it disappeared from the horizon. Hope it doesn't live up to my expectations. After stopping for a moment, Lin Fan glanced at the Underground Research Institute and stamped his feet on the ground twice. The underground seemed to be shaking, and it completely subsided not long after. In the face of the power of the Earth, even if the Underground Research Institute has undergone special, it could not withstand the terrifying pressure and was completely filled up. From today on, there will no longer be this Underground Research Institute. After doing all this, Lin Fan raised his head and glanced at the direction where the helicopter disappeared. His figure flashed and disappeared in the original place. The ground. High in the sky, two military helicopters flew across the sky. The roaring sound attracted countless zombies on the ground to chase. Inside the helicopter, Liu Yang and others looked as usual, not paying attention to the black cloaks wrapped around them, which looked very serious. Weird Yang Yiping. Suppressed by Lin Fan's plant powers, the zombie-like Yang Yiping looked very calm, as if he was sleeping. The two military aircraft were very fast, flying all the way towards the first group army. On the streets on the ground, the large swarm of zombies was attracted by the roar of the plane and chased it tirelessly. At the speed of the zombies, it was impossible to catch up with the helicopter. But even if the shadow of the helicopter was lost and even the sound disappeared, the zombies were still in full swing, pursuing aimlessly. The sun climbed up in the sky. On the street dozens of kilometers away from the first army, two military aircraft flew past the sky. A bloated female zombie was moving slowly on the ground. Listening. Hearing the roar of the helicopter in the sky, the female zombie subconsciously raised her head, staring blankly at the distant helicopter with her dead gray eyes. She did not chase after her like her zombies like crazy, but stopped quietly. Watch. On her bulging lower abdomen, something was moving violently. If it were a normal human woman, the child in her belly would be so violent that it would hurt to death, but for a woman who doesn't know what pain is, for the zombies, there is no feeling at all. The zombies tirelessly chase the roar of the helicopter, and take detours when passing the female zombie, just like the legendary Saint Moses who parted the sea. I don't know when, the zombie suddenly staggered and fell to his knees on the ground. The movement in his stomach became louder at this time, as if something was about to burst out of his belly. On the tall buildings on both sides of the street, countless survivors were waving their hands, shouting loudly at the sky, hoping to attract the attention of the helicopter, but it had no effect. It was not until the helicopter went away that these people cursed angrily and kicked the surrounding debris. Damn it, are all these military people eating shit? Didn't you see so many of us asking for help? Damn it, these soldiers are not reliable at all. It has been more than a month since the end, and there is not even a single cent for rescue. I have paid my taxes for so many years in vain. Aren't soldiers supposed to protect ordinary people like us? What is the country doing at this time? Have we been abandoned? Angry curses occurred in every corner where the helicopter passed by, and the survivors who could not be rescued could only disperse in anger after cursing. On the 27th floor of Ranjan Commercial Building, Wu En was also one of the angry ones. Amidst the angry curses, Wu En lit a cigarette and walked to the window, intending to let nicotine relieve the anger in his heart. With his arms propped up by the window, in the curl of smoke, Wu En, whose nerves were numbed by the cigarette, looked aimlessly. As he glanced around, Wu En's eyes suddenly stopped. Looking at the zombies running wildly on the street downstairs, Wu En seemed to have seen some new world, staring at the situation on the street. There were more than one zombie. In the past month, Wu En has seen it countless times. He has even seen the zombies running wildly many times. But the scene that happened in front of him today shocked him. Zombies have no intelligence and only know how to pursue. The smell of living people simply means running around. Even if there is something blocking the way in front of them, they will hit it without hesitation. But what happened in front of him today broke his cognition. There is a steady stream of zombies, swarmed through the streets in a mighty manner. Normally, the entire street would be occupied, but it was different today. A massive tide of corpses came from afar, chasing the sound of the helicopter disappearing, but when passing through a certain area, the zombies spontaneously detoured, as if the street had forked here. After bypassing this small area, the zombies returned to normal again. How high is the 27th floor? In 3 meters by calculation, it is more than 70 meters. Under normal circumstances, human eyes can only see a rough outline of more than 70 meters. Wu En looked hard at this miraculous scene on the street. He wanted to see what was going on. What made the zombies spontaneously circle around? Then he saw it. On the ground, a female zombie fell to the ground with a bloated belly. She seemed to be a pregnant woman, but other than that, the distance was too far, and he really couldn't see clearly. This feeling of being in a fog gave Wu En a feeling of scratching his heart. He felt that he seemed to have discovered something. With his heart pounding, Wu En quickly took out his mobile phone from his pocket and hurriedly in the meantime, the cigarette was burned to the butt of the cigarette, and it was so hot that he reacted. He spit out the cigarette and ignored the blistered cheek. Wu En excitedly turned on the camera, and kept zooming in on the screen with his fingers, and then he saw it. The woman lying on the ground was indeed a pregnant woman. He could even see the outline of a small arm moving under the clothes. Seeing this, Wu En's heart suddenly jumped, and he pressed the button without hesitation. In the video, he looked horrified, looking at the scene in the picture with fear of the unknown. Wu En is not stupid. Even people with common sense will think of children when they see this picture, but do zombies also have children? In other words, can zombies also have children? If zombies can also give birth to children, can humans be saved? Will the new generation of zombie babies be just like these zombies, stupid and irrational? He didn't know any of this, but he believed that whether humans survived the end of the world or were exterminated, the video he recorded next would definitely be the first of its kind and the most important information. Now, he also understands why the zombies instinctively avoid them. It is because there is the birth of new life. The continuation of a race cannot be separated from the birth of new life. Even wild beasts will instinctively protect their children, and these zombies, his actions are nothing more than the same. With shock, anxiety, and fear of the unknown, Wu En looked at the pictures on his phone. Suddenly, his breathing became rapid. In the picture, the woman's belly was opened, and a white and tender hand opened the belly and appeared in the air. Seeing this, Wu En's heartbeat almost stopped. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Doomsday. Chapter 146. Chapter 146. The sky is falling and there is a tall man holding it up. The zombie baby girl is growing up rapidly. Her white and tender hands are very small, just like a baby. The difference is that there are sharp nails on the tips of her fingers. Although they cannot be seen clearly, they should be very sharp. It's sharp, otherwise it wouldn't be possible to break open the belly easily. Wu En's heart was beating very fast, and his spirit was extremely shaken at this moment. He looked at the pictures on his phone with horror and fear. He didn't know whether he should continue to look at it. He always felt that he would see something terrifying next. Matter. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground, and his arms were stiff, unable to move at all, as if he had been cast under a restraining spell. The video picture on the mobile phone was not very clear. After all, it was 70 or 80 meters away, or even further. Just when Wu En didn't know what to do, a little head came out, and then Wu En was even more frightened. Something happened. The little head that just popped up seemed to know that he was watching. The little face like a porcelain doll suddenly raised, and the orangutan light in its eyes seemed to travel dozens of meters and pass through the mobile phone camera, just like looking at him. Screaming in fright at this horrifying scene, Wu En backed up crazily, and the phone in his hand was thrown to the ground like a hot potato. Rolling and crawling to hide next to a shelf, Wu En looked at the window in horror, as if he was afraid that the little monster would jump in directly from the window. Grass. Who's screaming? Are you trying to scare people to death? I was almost frightened to death by this voice in broad daylight. Gan. Wu En, what are you doing? Look at your ghostly appearance. Are you being fucked like a flower in your dream? Wu En's horrified scream was so violent that some survivors in the shopping mall stuck their heads out to watch. Some of them had a bad temper and even cursed angrily. When Wu En came back to his senses, Wu En was still in shock and helped him climbing up on the wall. Wu En looked at the window in fear. This appearance attracted the attention of other survivors, who all came over. What are you doing? Looking like you've seen a ghost. That's it, is there really a ghost in broad daylight? Hey, come to your senses. What did you see? Talk about it. Several men who came over pushed Wu En twice, obviously seeing something was wrong. Several men came over and seemed to give Wu En a lot of courage. Wu En took a deep breath and looked at him with complicated eyes. He glanced at me and said in a deep voice, "Come here." After saying that, Wu En walked to the phone, picked it up from the ground, and glanced at the screen. The video was still being recorded. After turning off the recording function, Wu En looked at the window and seemed to think that the 27th floor was so busy. Gao, unless that little monster can fly, there is no way to get up. With this kind of psychological comfort, Wu En walked to the window step by step. He picked up the phone and looked down, but the picture that followed made Wu En feel uncomfortable. He was stunned. In the picture on the mobile phone, the female zombie lying on the ground had a big hole in her belly. There was blood everywhere, but the little zombie was missing. What made Wu En even more horrified was the expression on the female zombie. Actually seemed to be laughing. Wu En was frightened. He felt that he couldn't understand this doomsday. Can zombies laugh? Don't they just roar like wild beasts? And the little zombie just now, look at it, the look in his eyes still made him shudder. Several men who followed Wu En thought something was wrong with Wu En and planned to make fun of him, but one of them stopped after raising his hand halfway. Several men were stunned. Looking blankly at the scene on Wu En's phone screen, everyone was stunned. This is, what? Why do you think this female zombie's expression is so weird? Gives me a chilling feeling. Wu En, were you frightened when you saw this? To be honest, it's a bit scary, but are you too timid? After regaining consciousness, Wu En originally wanted to record something more, but the zombies swarming past had completely blocked the body of the female zombie. It seemed that with the birth and departure of the little zombie, the female zombie had nothing left for the zombies to avoid. Seeing this, Wu En also gave up. He turned his head and looked at the men beside him. Wu En took a deep breath and clicked on the previously recorded video. Take a look at this. If you can still remain calm after reading this, I admire your courage. People are curious, especially this kind of challenging things, which are more likely to arouse people's curiosity. Many scary short videos can scare a person in this way. The most vivid one is a certain person. A gif of a punch punching through the LCD screen. Several men took Wu En's cell phone and looked at it attentively. Looking at the faces of several people, Wu En seemed to see himself before. Not long after, the individual exclaimed, his breathing quickened, but his gaze on the phone became more focused until. Damn it! You horse, you scared me to death. WDNMD, this is too scary. I even doubted whether this little thing was looking at me. Damn, this is so scary, this little chic thing is really something. My heartbeat almost stopped with fright. Looking at the mobile phone that was thrown on the ground, he dropped it twice in just 10 minutes. If this was before the end, Wu En would have been extremely distressed. But now, it's drizzling, and there are so many mobile phone counters in the shopping mall. Anyway, these phones are not locked, so at most they won't be able to activate more functions. Just like the one in his hand, it's Apple's latest model, costing more than 10,000 units. He couldn't bear to buy such an expensive phone before the end. He picked it up calmly. With his cell phone on the ground, Wu En looked at the frightened people and said with a smile, "How is it? Does it look good? Exciting. It's nice to watch, but it's so exciting that even if you're not feeling well, you can't stand it." One of them nodded, but that was not the case for the others. Several of them looked worried, obviously thinking of something deeper. "You say, zombies can give birth to children, can humans be saved? It's been more than a month, and the zombies are living healthier than us. They don't look like they have shriveled up over time like in Resident Evil. What I am most concerned about is whether this little zombie is intelligent, and whether this kind of pregnant zombie was pregnant and infected before the apocalypse, or whether the zombie was born after mating." Several people looked at each other and said something to each other. After hearing the last person's words, Meng Wei, who said it was exciting at first, quickly shook his head and said, "What do you think is giving birth to a child? The apocalypse has only been over a month, and even if the zombies knew how to mate, they wouldn't be able to give birth so quickly." Wu En listened to the words of several people without speaking. At this time, he suddenly asked, "You are all curious, where has the newly born little zombie gone?" After Wu En finished speaking, Meng Wei and others were stunned. They looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. The little zombie that disappeared was the thing that frightened them the most. This little zombie had wisdom. Not sure, but the moment I looked at the screen, it was definitely not simple. So what if you're curious? Meng Wei glanced at a few people and asked, "There are millions of zombies wandering around on the street even though there are millions of zombies outside. How can we still go out to find that little zombie?" Wu En and the others were stunned for a moment, and then they all realized. What's the use of thinking so much? They can't even protect themselves. It's better to let the big guys worry about this kind of thing. Anyway, if the sky falls, there will be tall people. They were holding on. A few people found it boring and continued to behave like they were doing nothing before. Wu En took his mobile phone and walked to the window, looking at the zombies that could not be seen below, lowering his head and operating something silently. On the bottom floor of Ranjan Commercial Building, a small figure walked in the lobby on the first floor. Wherever he passed, the zombies seemed to have seen a king and moved to both sides. The small figure like a baby was the little zombie that had burst out of its belly before. However, the fascinating light in his eyes has faded, leaving only the beautiful wine-red eyes. Although the little figure has just been born, it walks surprisingly fast. With its small hands pressed on the convenient zombie, it can be seen with the naked eye that the zombie quickly shrivels up, and then turned into fly ash starting from the head. After absorbing the life energy in the zombie body, the zombie baby girl seemed to have grown a bit. Facing the plundering behavior of the little zombies, the surrounding zombies did not make any evasive movements at all. This brought about as a result, the number of zombies in the hall decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then continued to be added from the streets. As the number of zombies decreased significantly, the zombie baby girl also continued to grow. The size of the baby girl increased from the previous one to the later one. 3 girls, a 6 or 7-year-old girl, and an 11 or 12-year-old loli. After robbing countless zombies of their vitality, the newly born baby girl actually grew to look like a 17 or 8-year-old girl. As the baby girl as I grew up, my rosy eyes were sometimes blank and sometimes angry, as if I was remembering something. Pictures flashed through my rosy pupils, including underground research rooms, restraints, syringes, doctors, mothers, and all kinds of things. This kind of knowledge was imprinted in her mind like an inheritance. Until the picture was finally frozen, it was the last sight in her memory, that was the face of a man. It seemed a long time ago. A man and a woman stood there silently, with the expressions on their faces it seems to be called mercy. Sorry, you saved me. Before I could ask your name, could you please throw me outside? It's too quiet here, I shouldn't be the one to ruin this pure land. The crisp voice is very sweet. This voice is very familiar to the girl. This is the voice she has heard the most in her memory. In the memory picture, the man was silent and said his name. My name is Lin Fan. Forest, Fan, Lin Fan. The girl spoke for the first time, her voice was as pleasant as her mother's, and she stuttered out a few jerky words. The memory freezes here, and then begins to regress, repeatedly playing the scenes in the underground research room, being rescued, and then being sent away. The cycle continues, and the two simple words become clearer and clearer. The same clear, still there are a few short letters. Military, military district, Yang, Yang Yiping. People, human experiments. The girl seemed to be learning to speak, and her enunciation became clearer and clearer. She lowered her head and glanced at the white cloth wrapped around her body. She looked at the zombies around her and seemed to understand something. Clothes, clothes, need to wear clothes, military zone, mother, Lin Fan. Become stronger, take revenge, military region. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Doomsday. Chapter 147. Chapter 147. The survivors of Ranjan building were wiped out. The girl who was attracted by the zombie wave was walking aimlessly in the lobby on the first floor. Her bare feet were white and tender, her legs wrapped in white cloth were slender and shiny, and her figure under the white cloth was graceful. The curves are exaggerated, as if the beauty of the female body is brought to the extreme. The girl's face is cold, or a little blank, without much expression. Her delicate facial features are indescribably beautiful even with such a dull look, especially her pair of wine-colored pupils, which have a strange beauty. The girl was wandering around the hall, seeming to be looking for something. Maybe she didn't find what she expected. The girl looked up and looked upstairs. She jumped up, and her slender legs exploded with a bouncing power that is incomprehensible to ordinary people. She jumped 6 or 7 directly. Mi Gao jumped to the second floor. The girl's figure walked past the stalls of well-known brands, tilting her head to look at the various clothes, and then walked in. I don't know how long later, when the girl walked out again, the white cloth on her body had disappeared, replaced by a long white dress that reaches to the knee. Not only the white dress, but also a small crown on the top of the girl's head, and white garland ornaments on her bright wrists, which seemed to match the clothes. She lowered her head and looked at the different types of shoes on the feet of the zombies around her. The girl turned around again. When she reappeared, the fair and attractive May 11 had already put on a pair of white stockings and a pair of exquisite high heels. The girl looked up and down and seemed to be satisfied with her current appearance. She sniffed, raised her small and delicate chin, and looked at the higher floor above with her beautiful rosy eyes. With a slight jump, the girl jumped to the 3rd and 4th floors as easily as if she were climbing stairs, and barely stopped until she reached the 26th floor. Looking at the zombies crowding around the stairs, the girl shook her head, as if she was disgusted with these stupid similar people. She pointed at random with her little hand, slapping the zombies that were rushing against the obstacles to stop as if they were immobilized, and then like a human being, he began to carry the heavy objects blocked on the stairs. Seeing this scene, the girl reluctantly nodded, looked at the heights, and jumped up with a slight leap. On the 27th floor, the girl was wandering as if taking a walk. Her small nose was twitching as if she was sniffing something. Soon, her eyes lit up. She looked at the men walking towards her, and the light in her eyes became even brighter. She took the initiative to greet them. Up. The video I saw was so scary that I almost pissed myself. It was much scarier than the horror movies I watched this year. Who says it's not, but the excitement is really exciting, but I don't know where the zombie kid went. Mengwei, do you think the zombie kid will come looking for Wu-En? I always feel that something is not right, Mengwei, Mengwei. What are you doing? Several men were talking, and suddenly realized that something was wrong. They turned to look at Mengwei, who had stopped and said nothing. They subconsciously looked forward, and then they saw the girl walking towards them. This girl is so pretty among the four. Ji Feng's eyes were stunned, but he quickly reacted and asked, is there such a beautiful girl in our shopping mall? Why do I feel so unfamiliar? I also feel that strangers are strangers. We can't meet all of the hundreds of people in a shopping mall, so strangers are normal. Ji Feng thought so. He turned around and left Mengwei standing where he was. His face was even a little abnormally pale. Ji Feng walked over and pushed him in confusion. What's wrong with you? Why do you look like you're about to be scared to death? Mengwei looked at the girl walking over blankly, and said stiffly, don't you think, this look and those eyes sound familiar? Ji Feng was stunned for a moment. The two people walking over subconsciously looked at the girl who was approaching. Suddenly, a creepy thought came to his mind. If these eyes were not for colored contact lenses, could it be the zombie kid? Open, are you kidding me? How long has it been since you were this old? Ji Feng was so frightened that he stammered. Looking at the girl approaching with a strange smile, a layer of cold sweat broke out on his head, and he was shaking. You seem to have seen me. The girl stopped and glanced at the four of them. At this time, the girl spoke very fluently, but the expression on her face was still blank. The four grown men, Ji Feng and Mengwei, were so scared that they couldn't even move. After speaking, they were obviously four grown men, but in front of the petite girl in front of them, they seemed more like a weak one. The girl tilted her head, a rosy light flashed in her eyes, bypassed the four people, and walked along the four sides. The way people came from continues to move forward. As the girl walked by, the sweet fragrance was inhaled into the lungs of Mengwei and the others. Soon, four more zombies appeared in the corridor. The four people who turned into zombies were deathly gray. His pupils scanned around, and the smell of living people came from all directions. The four people who had just turned into zombies roared and rushed to various areas on the 27th floor. Soon, bursts of screams and frightened wailings spread throughout the entire place. Floor 27. It was still the same window. Wu-En looked down at the street below. The bright mobile phone screen showed that something seemed to have been sent successfully. Da. Clatter, clatter. The crisp sound of high heels came from behind with an inexplicable rhythm. Wu-En turned around subconsciously and looked at the girl who had appeared not far behind him at some point. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, especially the pair of wine glasses. The pink eyes made him feel uneasy for some reason. He always subconsciously thought of the scene he had recorded before. But looking at the girl's body shape and age, Wu-En dismissed the unrealistic idea in his heart. How long has it been? Even if you blow air, it's not that fast, right? Who are you? Lifting her chin slightly, the girl looked at Wu-En and blurted out a question without any emotion. Are you the man standing at the window before? I remember you, and you should remember me too. Looking at the rosy light that gradually brightened in the girl's eyes, Wu-En felt a basin of cold water pouring down from his head instantly, sending chills down his spine. Even in this scorching summer, he still felt like he was in an ice cellar. You. Wu-En swallowed hard, his voice was hard. He wanted to ask something, but he didn't know what to say. I am her, I have grown up. After the girl said this in a daze, she turned around and left. Wu-En looked blank. He thought he was going to die soon. He wanted to try his best to delay the time, but he didn't expect that the girl would leave so decisively. What is it? It smells so good, Wu En took a few deep breaths subconsciously, and a special fragrance was inhaled into his lungs. The high concentration of zombie virus quickly evaporated and spread. In just a few seconds, Wu En's pupils turned deathly gray. At the door of Ranjin building, the girl's figure slowly walked out, looking up at the blazing sun in the sky. Her eyes slowly moved towards the direction of the military area. The girl walked towards the street, and as she jumped, her figure quickly disappeared. Inexplicably the fragrance spread on the street, and the massive group of corpses seemed to be attracted by something. With a hint of red in their dead gray pupils, they roared and ran wildly along the place where the girl disappeared. Countless zombies pursued the scent, and that as if to be a guide, the gathered zombies were rioting, and the tide of zombies gathered into a sea. They followed closely behind the girl, running tirelessly towards the military area. As the zombie tide left in large areas, the streets changed. It was empty, leaving only corpses on the ground and abandoned vehicles scattered everywhere. The zombies in the entire northeastern area of the Demon City rioted, and under the inexplicable attraction, they gathered into a vast and boundless tide of corpses. Hundreds of tens of thousands of zombies rushed towards the military area in the northeast, and as they advanced, the number increased, and the scope of the zombie tide also became larger and larger. The crazy rioting zombies brought endless shock to the survivors along the way. I have never seen such terrifying and purposeful actions of zombies. The number of running zombies is increasing, so that the living people trapped in various commercial buildings and even supermarkets are inexplicably no longer threatened by zombies. On the streets it was very clean, and not even a single zombie could be seen. Even some zombies with their legs cut off were inexplicably driven to crawl towards the northeast. This scene was shocking and terrifying. In just 1 in the afternoon, all the zombies in the northeastern districts of the city disappeared, and the empty streets were like a ghost town. The hospital did not know the situation in the northeastern area. The hospital was very busy today. Lin Yuyu and Zhao Wanqing were extremely busy, issuing watch counters to the female warriors, and then registering each person's name in the register, as well as selecting talents among the maids. Tailors who made clothes, printers who printed currency, managers, auditors, etc., these all require Lin Yuyu and the others to check at all levels and finally screen out useful talents. After a lot of work, by the time Lin Yuyu and others came back, it was already night. On the sofa, Lin Fan was holding Suzuya Luo in his arms. The delicious loli was rolled into a ball. When he came back from the research institute today, except for lunch, Lin Fan had been slumped on the sofa without moving. Salted fish is the king. Looking at the look on his face, he looked very tired. Women, Lin Fan quickly stood up and pressed the women on the sofa. If it weren't for Lin Yuyu and the others, he would be the one who was so busy. Lin Fan felt so lucky now. Are you exhausted? How about it? Is everything in order? Listening to Lin Fan's concerned inquiry, Lin Yuyu smiled, nodded, and said the arrangements are almost complete. The remaining fine things need to be filled in slowly. Before we know it, our power has exceeded 2,000 of people, close to 3,000. Nearly 3,000 people? Lin Yuyu's sigh made Lin Fan stunned. Isn't the number of people growing too fast? How long has it been? There are almost 3,000 people. This is something Lin Fan did not expect. Will Lin Fan be surprised? Fan's astonished eyes were all over the place. Zhao Wanqing stretched out her waist, showing her graceful curves, and chuckled. Actually, it's almost the same. In 3 days, I brought back 200 to 300, 300 to 400 people every day. I thought about it yesterday. Chi alone brought back almost a day's worth, plus we brought back some, it's close to 3,000, which is actually about the same. The actual number is 2,716, and female warriors account for more than half, a total of 1,814. After the remaining maids are divided into categories, there are only more than 400 maids left in farming and other fields. The rest all have their own strengths. For the time being, it's been arranged, and if there are no problems during the trial period, basically there won't be any changes. Among the women who have been arranged, there are more than 100 people responsible for making clothes. If the progress is fast, our ruling army will be formed soon. Now I am looking forward to those female warriors wearing white combat uniforms and wearing their hair. How about the sight of wearing a military cap? Lord, are you expecting it? If Zhao Wanqing hadn't said it, Lin Fan wouldn't have thought about it. Now that we talk about it, nearly 2,000 female soldiers wearing white combat uniforms and white military caps stood neatly in a row with tang knives on their waists. That kind of Lin Fan is already a little moved by the picture. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Gugu Da. Chapter 148. Chapter 148. The zombies came out of the cage and Lu Jingyu lost his arm. After dinner, Lin Fan leaned on the sofa with a calm expression. Suzioluo nestled in Lin Fan's arms, acting as a cute pendant. At this time, the advantage of height was reflected. It might be a bit difficult for Lin Yu and the others. That's almost it. Suddenly, Lin Fan said something like this without thinking. Suzioluo was stunned for a moment and muttered, "Brother, what's the matter?" Lin Fan didn't answer him at this moment. With his eyes closed, Lin Fan's consciousness had already transferred to the First Army's station 1 or 200 kilometers away. With the help of Liu Yang's eyes, Lin Fan saw what Liu Yang was seeing at this time. The place where he stayed. It was a large military tent. Next to it, Yang Yiping, wearing a cloak, was sitting calmly. This calmness was only temporary. Without Lin Fan's control, Yang Yiping would explode in an instant and change back to the appearance of the zombie before. Not seeing the figure of the rightful owner, Lin Fan was not impatient. Under the current situation, if nothing unexpected happened, the rightful owner would appear soon. Even though Lin Fan had guessed this, when the rightful owner actually appeared at that time, more than an hour had passed. There was a sound of footsteps outside the military tent. Judging from the density of the footsteps, there should not be many people. Even when they arrived at the entrance of the tent, the footsteps were even sparser. The curtain of the military tent was opened, and a tall and burly figure walked in. As Lin Fan sensed it, Liu Yang stood up instantly and saluted the figure as he walked in. "Commander-in-Chief, you have fulfilled your mission. Professor Yang has been brought back." With Liu Yang's eyes, Lin Fan saw this so-called commander-in-chief. He was tall and tall, probably in his 40s. The 2 stars on his shoulder straps clearly proved his identity as a lieutenant general. Lieutenant general. No matter what, he is an absolute high-level person everywhere, and even some commanders of military regions are only at the rank of lieutenant general. Looking at the lieutenant general in front of him with a calm and resolute face, and exuding the steely demeanor of a soldier, to be honest, it is difficult for Lin Fan to compare him with Yang Yiping. It is even more difficult to connect him with the mastermind behind the scenes. This face is so deceptive. Sure enough, the bad guy will not write these 2 words on his face, and looking at the other person like this, he is a deep-seated person. Hidden or not, he is a deep-seated old fox. He appears to be benevolent and moral, but in fact he is full of bad ideas. He only thinks about how to trick others. In the tent, Lu Jingyu had no idea that there was another person looking at him at this moment. While observing him, his majestic eyes swept over Liu Yang. Lu Jingyu raised his hand and patted his shoulder, saying, "Well done." After saying that, Lu Jingyu looked at Yang Yiping, who was sitting on the chair and wearing a cloak. A flash of doubt flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help but stepped forward and asked, "Dr. Yang, what's wrong with your appearance? The adjutant sent you a summons before, but he was slow to answer the phone. I wonder what happened? Has the research yielded any results?" As Lu Jingyu came closer step by step, under Lin Fan's control, Yang Yiping also stood up. However, At this time Lu Jingyu suddenly stopped and even retreated quickly. Seeing this, Lin Fan knew that he would stop again. There is no need to hide it. He is worthy of becoming a lieutenant general. This kind of vigilance is not something ordinary people can possess. In fact, it would be better if he didn't have that cloak, but Yang Yiping's appearance is really terrifying. The cloak was also helpless. Roar. A roar that was not like a human voice roared out from Yang Yiping's mouth. Without Lin Fan's suppression, the spore cells died instantly, and the zombie's animal nature returned. Yang Yiping howled and pounced on Lu Jingyu. Looking at Yang Yiping who was rushing towards him, Lu Jingyu's expression changed with shock. He felt something was wrong just now, especially after getting close to Yang Yiping. A fishy smell hit his face. This kind of smell would never appear on a doctor. Although Lu Jingyu he was already very alert, but he didn't expect Yang Yiping to attack so fast. He kicked him out without hesitation. In his haste, Lu Jingyu, despite his excellent physique, was shaken back a few steps, but fortunately, he had already distanced himself from Yang Yiping. At this time, he had already seen Yang Yiping, who could not be seen as human at all. His swollen head, ferocious face, and the blood all over his body proved that the person in front of him had already become a human being. He was a complete zombie. Lu Jingyu reacted quickly, decisively, and calmly. He was about to draw a gun with his backhand. At this time, roars and screams came from behind again. Lu Jingyu was shocked and could not turn around. Squatting down on the spot, his back sank, and then a heavy figure stumbled directly. He turned around suddenly and looked at the adjutant who had been pushed to the ground and bitten by several zombie-turned soldiers. He heard a harsh howl, row. After so many years of military life, Lu Jingyu felt cold all over his body. Roar. The roar came again. Lu Jingyu quickly turned around and looked at Lu Yang, who had been communicating with him normally just now, but had transformed into a corpse in the blink of an eye. Jingyu only felt his scalp numb. His general command tent has now completely turned into a zombie den. Bang. Shoot, Lu Jingyu, as a lieutenant general, even with Lu Yuanbin, the commander-in-chief's father, is here, he still needs the real thing. There was a gunshot, and Lu Yang, who rushed over, was shot in the head and fell. When he heard the gunshots here, the soldiers patrolling outside became alert instantly and rushed towards the general command tent. Part of the reason for firing the gun was to kill Lu Yang, who had turned into a zombie. On the other hand, it was a warning. After the shot, the zombies lying on the ground raised their heads, showing their ferocious faces covered in blood, and howled towards Lu Jingyu. This living person exudes a fresh breath. On the other side, Yang Yiping, who was kicked out, also rushed up with a howl. Lu Jingyu cursed in his heart and kept pulling the trigger, but the running zombies were erratic. The ammunition was limited, and after killing most of the zombies, the remaining few rushed forward. The empty pistol basically became a waste. Lu Jingyu raised his foot and kicked the zombie at the front. He fell to the ground, pulled his hands, and the arms of the two zombies that rushed over were twisted off, and then they were pushed to the ground. However, the zombies that rushed up behind him did not give Lu Jingyu time to react. He was knocked to the ground by the zombies that rushed up. Lu Jingyu never thought that one day he would be knocked down by zombies, or a group of zombies. When he was knocked down, he knew that something was wrong. He raised his foot and kicked out a zombie that was coming towards him, while his hands were squeezing the necks of Yang Yiping and another zombie. At this moment, the adjutant who was bitten to death suddenly convulsed and then twisted. He stood up, his deathly gray eyes gradually looking towards him. Lu Jingyu's heart sank. The current situation could not get any worse. If the adjutant rushed over again, his fate could be imagined. At this moment, several figures rushed out of the tent. Seeing the zombies all over the tent, the soldiers who rushed in were dumbfounded and shot quickly. The adjutant's head exploded and he was completely dead. Gunshots were heard one after another, and Lu Jingyu breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, the head of the zombie on the left was also blown open, and blood spattered Lu Jingyu's face. Turning his head to avoid the blood coming towards his face, Lu Jingyu felt a light touch on his hand. Lu Jingyu breathed a sigh of relief, but at this moment, he felt a sharp pain in his left hand. Ah! With a scream, Lu Jingyu kicked the zombies away hard and climbed up. Looking at the ferocious tooth marks on his wrists, his pupils suddenly shrank. He knew the horror of the zombie virus. It is extremely contagious. As long as it is exposed, the wound will transform into a corpse in a very short period of time. This time is about 5 to 10 minutes. If you are physically strong, the time will be longer. If the person is already dead, the corpse will transform faster. Look at the left wrist. Lu Jingyu felt a chill in his heart. There is currently no antidote for the zombie virus. If you are bitten by a zombie, there are only two consequences. First, if it is an arm, you can break the arm to survive, but if it is the stomach or neck, the torso can basically be left to die. Looking at the hideous wound on his wrist and the purple blood line spreading towards the top of his arm, Lu Jingyu was frightened. He didn't want to become a zombie, and he didn't want to test whether he withstood the infection of the zombie virus and became the first man in the world to be able to bring his own pathogen. With frightened eyes searching for a while, several soldiers and more soldiers who hurriedly saw the wounds on Lu Jingyu's wrists and the tents full of the zombie corpses all have a blank look in their eyes, and they don't know what to do now. Under normal circumstances, the army's response to being bitten by a zombie is to kill them on the spot, or to keep them under guard until they are completely transformed. There are exceptions to ground kills, that is, if you bite an arm or something like that, you can still save your life by breaking off the arm in time. Looking at the combat daggers on the soldiers' thighs, Lu Jingyu pounced directly on them. Give me the dagger quickly. Several soldiers woke up from a dream and quickly threw their combat daggers to Lu Jingyu. The combat daggers in the army were extremely sharp. Lu Jingyu took the combat dagger, felt cruel in his heart, and chopped down hard on his left arm. Poof! Ah! After cutting off the bones and tendons, Lu Jingyu screamed, and with one stroke, his left arm was completely cut off from the shoulder. Blood spurted out immediately. What happened? The tent was opened, and Wu Qiuazhong's old figure rushed in. Looking at Lu Jingyu, who had lost his arm, and the zombie corpses on the ground, he was stunned. Okay, why are there so many zombies in the army? And they are still there. How did these soldiers become infected in the most tightly guarded General Command tent? How did they pass through many checkpoints and reach the General Command tent of Lu Jingyu? Wu Qiuazhong couldn't understand, but he saw Lu Jingyu, who had lost too much blood and looked pale. Jingyu immediately shouted, "Hurry! Medic! Carry the commander-in-chief to the infirmary immediately! Stop the bleeding immediately!" The soldiers woke up from a dream and hurriedly went out to call the medical soldiers. Several soldiers had already carried Lu Jingyu, who had lost too much blood, out. Looking at the zombie corpses on the ground, Wu Qiuazhong's old face was gloomy, especially when seeing Yang Yiping, who was no longer human at all, on the ground. His white coat and the name on the ID card made Wu Qiuazhong's heart sink to the bottom. There must be a reason for everything to go wrong. Fortunately, there is no way for zombies to appear in the commander's tent. The only possibility is that Lu Jingyu did something. But now is not the time to talk about this. The key is Lu Jingyu, the commander-in-chief of the First Group Army. Please clean up this place. No rumors about what happened today are allowed. If I hear the slightest bit of news, everyone will engage in military law. Several soldiers present responded quickly. In the medical car, after 2 hours of rescue, Lu Jingyu was out of danger. At this time, he was lying on the pillow with a pale face while receiving blood transfusion. His life was saved and he was not infected into a zombie. But the left arm was completely broken off at the root. From now on, he can only be regarded as a cripple. But fortunately, the right arm is still there. For the left arm, you can consider installing a robotic arm. Wu Qiuzhong stood aside and looked at Lu Jingyu, who woke up, looked indescribably helpless. Tell me, what's going on? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Doomsday. Chapter 149. Chapter 149, Meeting hundreds of kilometers apart, Lu Jingyu was frightened and confused about the in vivo experiment. Lu Jingyu definitely did not dare to tell the truth. Faced with Wu Qiuzhong's inquiry, Lu Jingyu beautified the process, saying that he was studying zombie viruses. Vaccine, today I heard that the research laboratory had results, so I took Yang Yiping over. Unexpectedly, this happened. After taking a deep look at Lu Jingyu, Wu Qiuzhong did not choose to question. He believed 50% of these words. As for what the remaining 50% was, he probably understood it, but he did not explain it. At this age, people can see through many things, and Wu Qiuzhong didn't want to say so much anymore. Human experimentation is a taboo, no matter what your reasons are, no matter how great your ideal is, once it is exposed, your reputation will be immediately ruined and society will die, especially for people like Lu Jingyu. Even if the imperial capital has existed in name only, everyone will really make trouble. After knowing this, even Lu Yuanbin, the commander-in-chief, could not protect Lu Jingyu. Sighing, Wu Qiuzhong said, you should have a good rest. You will be in the medical vehicle these days. I will temporarily take over the command. The First Army cannot stop here. Lu Jingyu heard this and struggled to move. He wanted to get up. Thank you, Uncle Wu. He raised his hand to hold down Lu Jingyu, who was about to get up. Wu Qiuzhong shook his head and said, you take good care of yourself. I have watched you grow up since you were a child. If I don't help you, who will help you? Wait for us. The old man is dead, and the burden will fall entirely on your shoulders. Watching Wu Qiuzhong leave, Lu Jingyu's originally grateful expression suddenly turned cold, and his eyes became gloomy. If he still doesn't notice something is wrong at this time, he is really a stupid pig. The previous communication was interrupted, and Yang Yiping was brought back later. These must have been premeditated, and who the other party was, needless to say, must be the kid named Lin Fan in the video. He hates it. He didn't expect that before he could attack and capture the opponent, the boy named Lin Fan had already tricked him. If he hadn't been lucky and decisive enough, he would have turned into a zombie by now. Even if there was a problem at any stage today, he would most likely be a corpse now. Lin Fan. Lin Fan. If I don't kill you, my job as commander-in-chief of the First Army will be in vain. I will definitely repay the revenge of my broken arm 1,000 times from you. Sooner or later, all the abilities you have will be mine. Mine. The low roar was so inaudible that only Lu Jingyu in the medical car could hear it. If anyone walked in now and saw Lu Jingyu's red eyes, they would be shocked. Zi la. The TV screen next to him suddenly flickered a few times. Lu Jingyu's heart skipped a beat. He raised his eyes and looked at the TV that seemed to have a bad connection. He felt a little confused. Now he is already a bit dissatisfied. Large snowflakes appeared on the TV screen, and then a person's face appeared on the TV screen. Lieutenant General Lu, you don't look good. Broken arm revenge, I'm waiting for you to come to me. If you want my abilities, you can come. I'll be waiting for you at the Second Key Hospital in Shanghai. I hope it won't be too long. Long. On the screen, Lin Fan looked contemptuous. Lu Jingyu didn't know how Lin Fan did it. But being ridiculed like this, Lu Jingyu was so angry that his head was filled with blood and his face was flushed, but he couldn't say a word. The second chapter of the Magic City. The second key hospital is more than 100 kilometers away from here. How did the other party know that he was here? How did he accurately control the TV in front of him? Hacker. I hacked your sister's guest. Lu Jingyu was scared. What could the other party do? After doing this, is it possible to kill him from more than 100 kilometers away? He feels very unsafe now. Seeing Lu Jingyu's frightened look, Lin Fan on the TV smiled slightly and said contemptuously, "Don't worry, I won't kill you so quickly, play slowly, I hope you don't collapse too early, see you in the Devil City." After the words fell, the TV turned off and returned to the black screen state. Seeing that the TV finally went dark, Lu Jingyu breathed a sigh of relief. Since the other party said he would not kill him, he should not attack him. After all, the other party, if you want to play, you won't kill him. Thinking about Lu Jingyu makes you feel aggrieved. He is a majestic lieutenant general of the Lu family, the warlord of the Demon City. The commander-in-chief of the first group army. He has 100,000 soldiers under his command, and he has all kinds of advanced thermal skills. The weapon was now sitting here, being threatened by someone hundreds of kilometers away, but he didn't even dare to fart. He felt aggrieved. Lu Jingyu, who was feeling depressed, wanted to say something cruel, but when he thought about what Lin Fan had heard just now, he suddenly held back his words. Grass. No matter how aggrieved Lu Jingyu was now, Lin Fan felt very good now. Controlling a group of zombies to besiege Lu Jingyu, witnessing him having to cut off his arm to survive, and then going to the medical car to rescue him, as well as the conversation just now, recalling this scene, the smile on Lin Fan's face grew stronger and stronger. Just talking to Lu Jingyu hundreds of kilometers apart, Lin Fan suddenly thought of a new ability. Since he can control magnetic fields and electric energy, electromagnetism has always been indistinguishable. With such an ability, Lin Fan wanted to try it. Can you find Lu Jingyu through the internet? Then he connected to the TV in front of Lu Jingyu, and then mocked the other party fiercely. Seeing Lu Jingyu extremely angry but not daring to fight back, Lin Fan felt really happy. So what if you have an army group? What can you do to me? More than 100 kilometers apart, unless you use missiles of mass destruction like intercontinental missiles, you won't even think of touching me. Even if you hit an intercontinental missile, if you can explode it on my head, I think you are awesome. When the intercontinental missile actually explodes, on whose head it will be two different things. I'm not afraid of you using heavy firepower. When the time comes, the magnetic field will teach you how to behave. As for killing Lu Jingyu over 100 kilometers away, Lin Fan really can't do this yet. Being able to affect the TV set does not mean that Lu Jingyu can be killed more than 100 kilometers away. What's more, there is no point in killing him now. It is very simple. If you kill one Lu Jingyu, there will be a second one. It would be better to let him fight him with all the hard work, and then kick him to the ground when he is so arrogant and proud that he thinks he can be defeated with heavy troops. It should be very interesting then. Again, why do I feel more and more like I am the villain? Obviously I am righteous now. Zhang Jiao had an inexplicable smile. Lin Fan opened his eyes and raised his hand to touch his nose. But this feeling of being a villain is really good. Brother, why are you laughing? It feels so good to laugh. The little Lolita in his arms had a cute expression on her face. Lin Fan lowered his head and glanced at Suzialuo, and said with a bad smile, "Is this bad? I could be worse tonight." Suzialuo's little face turned pale, and he quickly lowered his head, his ears pricked through. Seeing Suzialuo like this, Lin Fan laughed. It felt like eating fish every day and teasing the little Lolita. It's like a needle but not a prick. But, starting from tomorrow, we can no longer waste our time. We have to go out to expand our territory. It's almost time to upgrade various abilities. Magnetic field abilities, thunder and lightning abilities, etc. should be promoted to level 8 as soon as possible. Then the power will be even more terrifying. It was noisy. It was already past 11 o'clock. Lin Fan had not done anything in the past few hours. He was all looking at Lu Jingyu. He did not waste time and destroyed half of the sky. It's getting late, go to bed. With Suzialuo in his arms, Lin Fan ran all the way to the master bedroom. How could the super small lowly escape Lin Fan's Wuzi mountain? Listening to Suzialuo's cry for help, Lin Yuyu and others also put down their pens and collected their books. Good folder, stopped the discussion, and walked towards the master bedroom one by one. Lin Fan, who had been partying all night, did not know that as they were partying, a post had been posted and a huge splash exploded all over the world, just like a meteorite fell into the sea, instantly setting off a boundless tsunami, knocking people all over the world unconscious. On the 27th floor of Ranjan building, zombies were looming, looking like ghosts in the dim light. On the ground, the phone lights up from time to time, and the message bar in the upper right corner keeps popping up messages one after another. With the prompts popping up one after another, the already small battery is even more in danger. The screen flashes a few times, and the prompt that the battery is low and about to shut down flashes. However, before the phone screen went completely black, one post attracted so much attention. Do zombies give birth to children? If zombies can reproduce, where will our survival be? After this post was posted in the afternoon, the popularity exploded instantly. The number of comments and forwards reached tens of millions and hundreds of millions. This is because it only took half a day. If there is enough time, the number of clicks will be even more terrifying. Even the original content in the post, the video and even the original post were forwarded to video networks such as YouTube, and instantly exploded around the world. When survivors struggling in the apocalypse clicked on the video, they saw a grand scene comparable to Moses parting the sea. They were all stunned, especially when the arm appeared in the outside world with its stomach broken open, and the sudden flash of the orangutan's eyes, which made the surviving people all over the world extremely frightened. Will zombies breed descendants? Are the new generation of baby zombies as intelligenceless as ordinary zombies? Will the new generation of baby zombies evolve? What does it mean for a zombie to give birth to a zombie baby? For more than a month since the end of the world, the zombies have not been undernourished and shriveled at all, and even they are jumping alive and running as fast as athletes. In such an apocalypse, can human beings really survive the zombies? All kinds of questions and frightened speeches flooded the entire internet. One comment after another was almost massacred. The previous one had just been posted, and the next one was this comment has gone down hundreds of floors in seconds. The emergence of zombie babies has undoubtedly dealt a heavy blow to survivors all over the world, especially in today's increasingly serious and critical moment. Survivors, there was even more panic and despair. Until late at night, another post was posted online, and the panic atmosphere was pushed to its peak at this moment. The source of this post was not from the Eastern Empire. It was rare that the Millennium Empire had been silent for so long. After that, a little bit of sound finally appeared. The video was sent to YouTube and major video websites, and then spread all over the world. The content of the video was very simple, but the title was eye-catching enough. An in-depth analysis of the reasons why the zombies have not changed at all, are even faster and attack more ferociously. Doomsday, I am the only one in the world who has superpowers. Author, Gugu Da. Chapter 150. The first half of chapter 150 looks like a human being, but in the second half, is this different from cerebral palsy? Lin Fan was unaware of the excitement on the internet. For him, whether the zombies had changed or not was of little significance. No matter how fast you are, no matter how ferocious your attacks are, can you still withstand his superpowers? Lin Fan woke up at dawn in the morning, but unlike in the past, he did not get up today. The construction of the city wall was completed, and all the things that needed to be done were done, so there was no need to get up early in the morning. If he wakes up earlier than a chicken and goes to bed later than a dog day in and day out, that would be too tiring and not at all in line with his current status. What's so good about getting up so early? Although the points are delicious, the little loli in my arms smells better. She hugged Suziluo beautifully and closed her eyes. Not long after, Lin Yuyu and others woke up one after another. Looking at Lin Fan, who had not yet gotten up, they all had strange expressions on their faces, as if they had discovered a new world. Lord, didn't you get up early today? Lin Yuyu hugged her from behind. Lin Fan turned around and kissed her on the forehead and said, from today on, there is no need to get up early. All the important things are done. All that is left is to kill zombies and expand the scope of influence. There's no need to be in such a hurry. Although he said that, Lin Fan didn't stand still all the time. Seeing Lin Yuyu and the others getting up and putting on clothes, Lin Fan slowly walked to the ground. Li Yun and 3 others who had been waiting for a long time quickly got up to serve Lin Fan and put on his clothes. The 3 women each performed their duties. This time, Lin Yuyu and the others were waiting for Lin Fan in the living room. More than an hour later, Lin Fan walked out of the master bedroom. In the living room, Lin Yuyu and others were busy with their own things. The one writing information, the one looking at his phone. Lin Fan walked to the sofa and sat down, casually put his arm around Zhao Yanyan's slender waist, and rubbed it carefully with his fingers. The 3 Li Yun people who came out later were busy between the kitchen and the living room. Put the meals that have been prepared long ago on the table. My lord, the food has been set. Please serve it. At this time, Zhang Kaiyu came over and stood next to the sofa, lowering her head and speaking in a humble and respectful tone. Lin Fan put down his phone and was about to get up. At this time, Zhao Wanqing, who was sitting opposite and looking at something, suddenly let out a chuckle and shook his head. At the same time, while flipping through the content on the phone, no matter how he looked at it, he felt that the smile was full of irony. Zhao Wanqing's unusual behavior attracted Lin Fan's attention. Lin Yuyu and others who had just stood up also looked at the still searching gaze. Zhao Wanqing sitting on the sofa. Wanqing, what did you see? Such a strange smile. Zhao Wanqing raised her head, looked at Lin Fan and others' confused looks, and said with a smile, Yuyu, you also know that didn't we create a team specifically responsible for intelligence yesterday? Although there are no brilliant results yet, it is not without any effect. No, he sent me an interesting video early in the morning. As if recalling the content in the video, Zhao Wanqing couldn't help but shook her head, and then handed the phone to Lin Fan. Lord, take a look. It's quite interesting. Although the idea is very good, it still feels like it's just wishful thinking. It's okay to take it as a joke. Suspiciously, Lin Fan took the mobile phone handed over by Zhao Wanqing. Lin Fan wanted to see what the video that Zhao Wanqing commented on was about. Lin Yuyu and others also looked at the mobile phone in Lin Fan's hand curiously, seeing that all the girls were a little confused. Curious, Lin Fan simply sat back on the sofa to make it more convenient. Before watching the video, the first thing Lin Fan saw was the title of the video. An in-depth analysis of the reasons why the zombies have not changed at all, are even faster and attack more ferociously. After seeing this title, Lin Fan felt that he was not interested anymore. He already knew the reason why the zombies did not change. Whether it was the discovery in the Underground Research Institute or the subsequent discovery by Zhao Yanyan, Lin Fan knew what the zombie was. What's going on? But since Zhao Wanqing recommended it and said it was very interesting, there must be something interesting in this video. After all, Zhao Wanqing has long known the reason why the zombies have not changed yet. Click the video play button. First of all, what appeared was a white scientist. Looking at the background in the video, He should also be in a research institute, but it seemed to be more rigorous and equipped than Yang Yiping's. My name is David Smith. Before this, not many people may know me. These are not important. What is important is the results I am about to show today. More than a month ago, the zombie crisis suddenly broke out and swept the world in less than 2 days. This crisis came too suddenly. In just 2 days, all the major empires around the world fell under crisis. No one knows how the zombie crisis came about and how it spread, through the air or drinking water. But these are not important. What is important is what I want to say next. I believe everyone has discovered that after more than a month, the zombies have not changed at all from more than a month ago. Except for being devoid of intelligence, eating people, and not dying after being fatally injured in areas other than the head, they are almost the same as us humans. There is no difference at all. We have all seen a series of zombie movies such as Resident Evil. As time goes by, the zombies have not become shriveled and rotten like in the movies. Why is this? Cannibalism? No, that's not the case. The white scientist in the video shook his index finger, then walked a few steps to several culture tanks containing zombies, pointing at the shriveled or normal zombies in the culture tanks. The white scientist continued. See it? These completely different zombie forms. The left side is the normal zombies we can see in the outside world, and the right side is the truth I am about to reveal to you. Speaking of this, the white scientist's face flashed with wonder. He looked at the zombies in the culture tank with fanatical eyes and said with excitement, to be honest, it's unbelievable. Until now, I can't imagine that zombies are actually like us. Humans are different. Just like plants, the energy required for body movements comes from sunlight. After my research, the existence of zombies is like a moving plant, or solar energy absorption and storage. They are like large batteries, and as time goes by, the light contained in the zombies' bodies the more you can do. The zombies have not shown signs of decay so far, all because their cells have become light energy extractors. As long as they receive enough sunlight, in a sense, these zombies can survive as long as they are not headshot. Longer than us humans. Even, according to my speculation, as long as the sun does not explode or there is no sunlight for a month or two, zombies can theoretically live forever. Speaking of this, the white scientist's face was full of shock. Looking at the zombies in the culture tank was like looking at some peerless treasure. His shining eyes were like an alcoholic seeing a peerless wine or a pervert seeing a peerless treasure. Beauty. Even Lin Fan suspected that if the zombies didn't bite and there were no glass doors to block them, this white scientist would pounce on her and kiss her a few times. But this white scientist does have something, and his research conclusions are basically correct. Zombies. Lin Fan didn't know whether they could live forever, but in his opinion, the white scientist was right in all aspects of zombies. If there was no external interference and the zombie virus would not undergo some necrotic mutation, the zombies would really be better than humans live long. Eternal life. This is something that humans have been pursuing throughout history, but no matter how much research is done, human lifespan cannot be changed. But in zombies, I see eternity. I even wonder, are zombies really another evolution of humans? For more than a month, we tried to crack the zombie virus, but my team and hundreds of the best scientists in various fields failed. We have to admit that the zombie virus cannot be cracked in a short time. Then we tried to change direction and decipher the zombie cell code, hoping to get the key to eternal life, but, without exception, they all failed. Speaking of this, the white scientist pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose. His face was full of frustration, and he seemed to be very sorry. Although we have failed, we will still not give up research on zombie viruses, and we will not even give up on the key to eternal life. I believe that our research will bear fruit sooner or later. But now is not the time to talk about this. Let's get back to the topic. Is it necessary for zombies to eat people? Not so. We have fed the zombies fresh flesh and blood, but the zombies are not very interested in these. What they are really interested in is infection. Instead of eating people, between the two choices of sunlight and humans, zombies prefer sunlight. Having said this, the white scientist David Smith walked to a large culture tank and waved to the soldiers not far away. Soon a shriveled zombie was thrown in, while the white scientist David Smith came from on the other side of the culture tank. He got into a cage. The top of the large culture tank cast sunlight, and the shriveled skeleton-like zombie that was pushed into the culture tank instantly looked like a shark that smelled blood. It crawled into the sunlight with all four limbs. The white scientist in the cage 2 meters away turned a blind eye. See it? Among the two choices of sunlight and living people, zombies chose sunlight, which was more important to them, and biting people was secondary. Even if you look carefully, you can see that in the sunlight, the zombie's shriveled body is moving with the naked eye. Visible speed recovery. Step by step, he walked out of the cage. The white scientist David Smith looked at the zombies in the sun and continued seeing this. Everyone must understand why most zombies are lazy and calm during the day, but become more and more lazy at night. To be violent, to put it simply, you eat enough during the day and wander around at night, chasing humans and infecting them into the same kind. Although my team and I still don't understand why the zombies do this. Is it group consciousness? Zombies without intelligence do not understand what group consciousness is. They only know how to blindly infect humans. Based on these characteristics of zombies, my team and I have some immature suggestions, which is to mobilize the power of major empires around the world to build a dome over Millikan to completely block the sun. It will not take more than a month. Over time, the zombies will turn into zombies with almost no threat. Our American empire promises that as long as the major empires around the world are willing to lend a helping hand, freedom-loving America will definitely dispatch all transport aircraft and naval warships to rescue the survivors of each empire to America. At that time, nuclear weapons will be used to cleanse them without distinction. Land, so that all zombies in the world will be wiped out. In a few years, when the nuclear radiation dissipates, we humans will once again dominate the Earth. Looking at David Smith, a white scientist with arms outstretched and a fanatical expression in the video, Lin Fan finally understood why Zhao Wangqing was laughing. Is this guy with cerebral palsy? Although the research results are real, but you are talking about this human being. Are you saying that? Build a huge high-altitude dome in Millikan to block the sun? You are simply a little genius. How is this different from the Wall Maria in Attack on Titan? Or is it the Wall of Life in Pacific Rim? Wall. What is this thing other than cerebral palsy? Let's not talk about how much manpower and material resources are spent. It's outrageous to bring all the survivors in the world to Millikan. Freedom. Freedom, your sister's freedom, carrying a gun every day, going out on the streets, always on guard. Where is the freedom of a peanut? There is also racial discrimination. Do you call this freedom? The most incomprehensible thing is that your horse's global indiscriminate nuclear bombs are clearing the ground. That's the wise militia. Are you going to do this? How many years does it take for nuclear radiation to dissipate? Is the Earth still inhabited by people at that time? If you are given a nuclear winter every minute, why do you need to build a dome? The smoke and dust from nuclear radiation can even build a dome for you, and the atmosphere is completely corroded by you. How many people with cerebral palsy can come up with this idea? Shaking his head, Lin Fan sneered. The first half is still something for people to watch, but the second half is like a ghost. I even added subtitles for fear cannot read it. Really interesting. Lee Saiki nodded her little head and commented, it's true, this person is a fool.